When a 7 months pregnant waitress locks eyes with the crime boss who destroyed her life, she knows her carefully built escape is over. Elena Carter thought disappearing into the shadows would keep her safe from Victor Romano, the man whose bullet she watched tear through another woman's skull, the man whose child now kicks inside her belly. But fate has other plans. Tonight, in a greasy downtown diner at 2 a.m., their worlds collide again. And Victor Romano doesn't let go of what belongs to him. Ever. If you want to know how this impossible story unfolds, stay with me until the end. Hit that like button and comment what city you're watching from. I want to see how far this story travels. The fluorescent lights of Danny's all-night diner buzzed with the persistent hum of something dying slowly. Elena Carter had learned to tune it out, the same way she'd learned to tune out the ache in her swollen feet, the burning pressure in her lower back, and the constant anxiety that lived beneath her ribs like a second heartbeat. 7 months pregnant and pulling double shifts wasn't sustainable. She knew that. But neither was homelessness, and her savings account currently held $63.18, barely enough for next week's groceries, let alone the upcoming reality of diapers, formula, and medical bills. She refilled coffee for table 6, a tired trucker who never looked up from his phone, and made her way back toward the counter, one hand instinctively supporting the weight of her belly. The baby kicked, hard, and she winced. "You good, hun?" Marlene asked from behind the register, her gravelly smoker's voice thick with concern. The older woman had been working at Danny's for 15 years, and she'd taken Elena under her wing the moment she'd shown up 4 months ago, obviously pregnant, obviously running from something, and obviously desperate. "Fine," Elena lied, forcing a smile. "Just active tonight." "Boy or girl?" Marlene asked for probably the 20th time. "Don't know," Elena said, which was the truth. She couldn't afford the extra ultrasounds that would tell her, and part of her didn't want to know. Didn't want to make it more real than the relentless kicks and rolls already did. The bell above the door chimed, and Elena turned automatically, her waitress smile already in place. Then the world stopped. 3 men walked in, and Elena's blood turned to ice water in her veins. She knew that walk, that presence, the way the air seemed to shift and tighten when he entered a room. Victor Romano didn't just walk into places, he claimed them, the same way an apex predator claims territory. 6'3" of perfectly tailored menace, dark hair swept back from a face that would have been beautiful if it weren't so dangerous. Dark eyes that missed nothing. A mouth that curved into cruelty as easily as it curved into charm. And he was looking directly at her. Elena's hand tightened on the coffee pot, her feet locked to the linoleum floor. Every instinct screamed at her to run, but running would only confirm what he was clearly already piecing together. Because those dark eyes had dropped from her face to her belly, and the expression that crossed his features was something she'd never seen before. Shock. Pure, unfiltered shock. "Elena," Marlene's voice seemed to come from very far away. "You okay? You look like you've seen a ghost." That was almost funny, because ghosts were supposed to be from your past, dead and buried. Victor Romano was very much alive, and judging by the way he'd frozen in the doorway, his 2 associates nearly colliding with him from behind, he was just as stunned to see her as she was to see him. 4 months ago, she'd disappeared, vanished in the middle of the night from the tiny apartment he'd kept her in, taking nothing but the clothes on her back and the bus fare she'd been secretly stashing for weeks. She'd left no note, no explanation, no forwarding address. Because how do you explain to the man you're sleeping with, the man who's shown you more tenderness than anyone in your life, that you watched him execute a woman in cold blood? How do you reconcile the Victor who'd held her at night, who'd traced her skin like she was something precious, who'd whispered in Italian against her hair, with the Victor who'd put a bullet between a crying woman's eyes without hesitation? The coffee pot slipped from her nerveless fingers. It shattered across the floor in an explosion of glass and scalding liquid. The sound seemed to break whatever spell had frozen both of them in place. "Shit, Elena! Careful!" Marlene was already moving, grabbing towels from beneath the counter. I'm sorry. Elena bent automatically to help clean up, and that's when her world tilted violently. The blood rushed from her head, black spots danced across her vision. Strong hands caught her before she hit the ground. She knew those hands, knew the calluses on the palms, the careful strength in the fingers, the scent of expensive cologne and gunpowder that clung to his skin. Don't touch me. The words came out breathless, panicked. She tried to pull away, but Victor's grip was iron. You're about to faint. His voice was exactly as she remembered, low, controlled, with that slight accent that only emerged when he was emotional. Right now, she heard it clearly. When's the last time you ate? None of your business. She finally managed to wrench herself away, stumbling backward. Her shoulder blades hit the counter. Trapped. Victor didn't move closer, but his eyes, those dark, calculating eyes, cataloged everything. The faded waitress uniform with someone else's name stitched on the pocket, the exhaustion written into every line of her body, the cheap sneakers held together with duct tape, the way her hands instinctively cradled her swollen belly. How far along? His voice was deceptively calm, but Elena had spent enough time in his bed to recognize the danger underneath. This was Victor at his most controlled, which meant he was barely controlling anything at all. Marlene, can you handle the floor? Elena didn't take her eyes off Victor. Around them, the entire diner had gone silent. The two men with Victor, one she recognized as Marco, his head of security, the other was unfamiliar, flanked him like wolves waiting for a command. Sugar, you want me to call someone? Marlene's voice was sharp with concern. She'd positioned herself within arm's reach of the phone. No, it's fine. I just need... Elena's mind raced. She needed to get him out of here, away from Marlene and the other customers and anyone else who might become collateral damage when this exploded, because it was going to explode. I need to talk to him. Outside. Victor's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. After you. Not alone. Elena's voice was steady despite the terror flooding her system. Marlene, I'll be right outside. 5 minutes. Honey. 5 minutes. Elena forced herself to move, to walk past Victor toward the door. She could feel the heat of him, too close, as he turned to follow. Could feel his gaze like a physical weight on her back. The summer night air hit her like a wall of humidity. The parking lot was nearly empty. Her beat-up Honda, the trucker's rig, and now a black SUV that screamed money and danger. Victor's vehicle, undoubtedly. Elena made it 3 steps from the door before her knees buckled again. This time when Victor caught her, she didn't have the strength to pull away. He lowered them both onto the curb, keeping one arm around her shoulders, the other moving instinctively to her belly. Don't. She caught his wrist. Don't touch. The baby kicked, hard enough that Victor must have felt it through her thin uniform. His entire body went rigid. 7 months, he said. It wasn't a question. His hand stayed where it was, fingers splayed across her stomach. You disappeared 9 months ago. 8, Elena whispered. 8.5. Mine. Again, not a question. A statement of absolute fact. Elena squeezed her eyes shut. Victor, why? The single word contained multitudes of emotion, rage, betrayal, confusion, hurt. His hand tightened on her shoulder, just shy of painful. Why did you run? Why did you... His voice cracked slightly, and he stopped, visibly collecting himself. This was why she'd run. Because this version of Victor, the one who could be hurt, who could feel betrayal, who looked at her like she'd torn his heart out, was harder to reconcile with the monster she'd seen that night than any amount of violence. I saw you. The words tumbled out before she could stop them. That night, the warehouse on 5th, I followed you because I thought, it doesn't matter what I thought. I saw you kill her. I saw you put the gun to her head while she cried and begged. And I saw you. Victor's hand left her belly, moved to her chin, forcing her to look at him. You saw me execute a traitor who'd gotten 3 of my men killed, who sold information to the Volkovs that resulted in an ambush, who knew exactly what she was doing when she made that choice. She was crying. They usually do. No apology, no justification, just flat statement of fact. Elena felt hysteria bubbling up in her chest. And you wonder why I ran? You wonder why I didn't stick around to see what you'd do when you found out I'd witnessed? You thought I'd hurt you. Victor's voice was ice. You thought I'd kill you to protect myself. I didn't know what you'd do. The words came out as a sob. I didn't know anything anymore. The man I thought I knew didn't exist. You are. I'm exactly who I've always been, Elena. Victor's thumb brushed across her cheekbone, catching the tear that had escaped. I never lied to you about what I am. Never pretended to be anything other than what I am. That was almost true. He'd never explicitly told her he was a crime boss, but he'd never hidden the guns, the late-night calls, the dangerous men who deferred to him. She'd just been willfully blind, choosing to see the tender lover instead of the killer. You should have told me about the baby. His voice dropped lower. You should have. I had a right to know. Rights, Elena laughed, the sound bitter and broken. You want to talk about rights? I have the right to protect my child from his father? Victor's hand moved back to her belly, possessive and gentle at once. From the man who would burn this entire city to the ground to keep him safe? That's exactly what I'm afraid of. Elena tried to shift away, but there was nowhere to go. That's exactly why I left. Because I don't want my son growing up in that world. I don't want him learning that violence is the answer to everything. I don't want... Son? Victor's entire demeanor changed. Something raw and vulnerable crossed his features. You're having a boy? I don't know. Elena's hand covered his, an instinctive gesture she regretted immediately. I've been calling the baby him in my head. I don't actually know. Victor was quiet for a long moment, his hand warm against her stomach, feeling their child move beneath his palm. When he spoke again, his voice was rough. You're working double shifts in a diner. Living where? That's none of your... Elena. He cut her off, and the command in his voice made her bristle. You're 7 months pregnant with my child, you just nearly fainted from exhaustion, and you're wearing shoes held together with tape. It's absolutely my business. Where are you living? A motel on 7th. The muscle in Victor's jaw ticked. The Paradise? She didn't answer, which was answer enough. The Paradise Motor Lodge was exactly as terrible as it sounded. Weekly rates, roaches, and the kind of neighbors who minded their own business because they were running from something too. Not anymore. Victor stood in one fluid motion, pulling her up with him. Marco, bring the car around. Wait, no. Elena tried to dig in her heels, but her body betrayed her. She was so tired, so desperately tired. I'm not going anywhere with you. You're 7 months pregnant, clearly malnourished, and living in a place that probably has black mold and bed bugs. So, yes, you're coming with me. His tone left no room for argument. You can't just... Can't what? Protect my child. Ensure the mother of my son isn't collapsing from exhaustion in a diner at 2 a.m? Victor's hand cupped her face, forcing her to meet his eyes. You can hate me all you want, Elena. You can believe I'm a monster. But you will not endanger yourself or our baby out of pride or fear. This isn't about pride. Then what is it about? Punishment? His thumb traced her lower lip. You want to punish me for being who I am? Fine. Punish me. But not at the expense of our child's health. The SUV pulled up, Marco behind the wheel. The door opened like a mouth waiting to swallow her back into the world she'd fled. Elena thought about the motel room with its stained carpet and broken air conditioning. Thought about the ramen noodles she'd been living on because she couldn't afford anything else. Thought about the constant fear of what would happen when the baby came and she couldn't work and the money ran out completely. Thought about the expression on Victor's face when he'd felt their son kick. I can't go back to how things were, she whispered. I can't pretend I didn't see what I saw. I'm not asking you to. Victor's hand slid from her face to the back of her neck, his fingers threading through her hair. I'm asking you to let me take care of you, both of you, until the baby comes. Then we'll figure out the rest. And if I say no, his smile was sharp and humorless. Then I'll have Marco collect your things from the Paradise and bring you anyway. But I'd prefer you came willingly. That's not a choice. No, Victor agreed. It's not. But I'm trying to pretend it is, for your sake. Elena looked back at the diner. Through the window, she could see Marlene watching, her phone in her hand. If Elena screamed, she'd call the police. But what good would that do? Victor Romano owned half the police force, and the other half knew better than to cross him. Besides, he was right about one thing. She was endangering the baby. Had been endangering the baby for months now, running herself into the ground trying to survive. And for what? To prove she could do it alone? To maintain some moral high ground that was built on quicksand? 1 month, she heard herself say. Until the baby comes, then we reassess. Victor's expression didn't change, but she felt the tension leave his body. Agreed. He helped her into the SUV with a gentleness that contrasted sharply with the steel in his earlier words. The leather seat felt impossibly luxurious after months of the motel's broken-down furniture. The air conditioning worked. The car probably cost more than she'd make in 5 years of diner shifts. Your things? Victor asked, sliding in beside her. Everything I own fits in a duffel bag. The admission burned. At the motel. We'll collect it tomorrow. He pulled out his phone, already typing. You need food, real food. When did you last have a proper meal? Elena didn't answer. Couldn't remember, honestly. Meals had become an afterthought, something to squeeze in between shifts when her tips covered more than just gas money. I'll take that as too long. Victor's hand found hers in the darkness of the back seat, his fingers lacing through hers with familiar ease. Doctor's appointment tomorrow, full checkup, then we'll get you settled. I have a doctor. At the free clinic on 9th? Victor's tone made it clear what he thought of that. Not anymore. Elena wanted to argue, wanted to assert her independence, to prove she didn't need his money or his protection or the safety of his world. But the baby kicked again, and exhaustion crashed over her in waves, and she was so very tired of fighting. I still hate what you do, she whispered. I still can't accept. I know. Victor's thumb traced circles on the back of her hand. But you're here. That's enough for now. The SUV pulled away from the diner, from the fluorescent lights and grease-stained floors and the life Elena had been barely surviving. She watched it disappear in the side mirror and tried not to think about the fact that she was heading straight back into the darkness she'd run from. Only this time, she was carrying Victor Romano's child. And that changed everything. Victor's penthouse was exactly as Elena remembered. All dark wood and leather furniture, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, and the kind of sleek, expensive emptiness that spoke of a man who spent very little time actually living in his space. Guest rooms made up, Victor said, his hand on her lower back as he guided her through the living room. Ensuite bathroom. Everything you need should be there. I remember where the guest room is. Elena pulled away from his touch, needing the distance. I lived here for 6 months. You lived in my bedroom for 6 months. Victor's correction was mild, but pointed. The guest room was just storage. Heat crept up Elena's neck. He was right. She'd spent almost every night in his bed, wrapped in his arms, listening to his heartbeat beneath her ear while he traced patterns on her skin in the darkness. The guest room was different now. The boxes and miscellaneous furniture were gone, replaced by an actual bed, a queen size with a plush mattress and what looked like Egyptian cotton sheets. There was a dresser, a nightstand, even a small sitting area by the window. I'll have Marco bring you some clothes tomorrow, Victor continued. For tonight, there should be something in the closet. Elena opened the closet door and found several sets of comfortable-looking pajamas in her size, all with tags still attached. You keep random women's clothes in your guest room? I had them delivered while we were driving. Victor leaned against the doorframe, watching her with those dark, unreadable eyes. I still have your sizes from before. Of course he did. Victor Romano forgot nothing, remembered every detail, every preference, every small piece of information that might prove useful later. It was what made him so effective at what he did, and so dangerous. There's food in the kitchen, he said. Help yourself to anything. I'll have my chef come by in the morning. You have a chef now? I have a lot of things now. Something flickered across his face. Things changed after you left. Elena wanted to ask what things, but exhaustion was pulling at her bones, making her eyes heavy. The bed looked impossibly comfortable, and she hadn't slept in anything but a lumpy motel mattress in months. Thank you, she forced herself to say, for this, for tonight. Victor pushed off the doorframe, crossing to her in 2 strides. He reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and when she didn't, his hand settled on her belly again. Their son kicked immediately, like he recognized his father's touch. I meant what I said. Victor's voice was low, intense. I will keep you both safe, whatever it takes. That's what I'm afraid of. Elena covered his hand with hers. Your version of whatever it takes usually involves bodies. Only when necessary. No apology, no shame. The world I live in doesn't allow for weakness, Elena. Doesn't allow for mercy. I protect what's mine, and I eliminate threats. That's how you survive. And is that the world you want for him? Elena pressed his palm harder against her stomach. Is that what you want our son to learn? Victor's jaw tightened. What I want is irrelevant. What matters is keeping him alive long enough to make his own choices. That's not an answer. It's the only answer I have right now. He leaned down, his forehead resting against hers. Ask me again in a month. After he's born, after you've seen that I can keep you both safe, then maybe I'll have a better answer. Elena closed her eyes, breathing in the scent of him, cologne and danger, and something uniquely Victor. She'd missed this, she realized with a pang. Missed the solid warmth of him, the certainty in his voice, the way he made her feel protected, even while knowing exactly how dangerous he was. 1 month, she whispered. Then I'm gone unless you can prove to me that this life won't destroy him. 1 month, Victor agreed. His lips brushed her forehead, gentle as a prayer. Sleep, Elena. Tomorrow we start figuring out the rest. He pulled away, heading for the door, and Elena felt the loss of his presence like a physical ache. Victor? He turned back, one hand on the doorframe. The woman you killed, the one I saw, did she have children? Victor's expression went cold. Why does it matter? Because I need to know. If I'm going to let you anywhere near our son, I need to know if you're capable of making a child fatherless or motherless. Silence stretched between them, heavy with unspoken history. No, Victor finally said. No children, no family that gave a damn about her. She made her choices knowing exactly what the consequences would be. And when those consequences came, she didn't try to bargain with information or money. She begged for her life because she was afraid to die, not because she had anything to live for. How do you know that? Because I asked. Victor's voice was flat, emotionless. I always ask, and I always know exactly who I'm putting in the ground before I pull the trigger. Elena's hand tightened on her belly, protecting the life growing inside her from the casual way Victor discussed death. Sleep, he said again. Then he was gone, the door clicking softly shut behind him. Elena stood in the guest room, in this comfortable cage, and wondered if she'd just made the biggest mistake of her life, or if maybe, possibly, she'd finally made the only choice that would keep her son alive. Outside the windows, the city glittered like broken glass, beautiful and sharp and dangerous. Victor Romano's kingdom, built on blood and fear and power. And somewhere in the darkness of this penthouse, the man himself was probably making calls, moving pieces on his chessboard, ensuring that his newly discovered child would be protected by every ruthless resource at his disposal. Elena changed into the soft pajamas, climbed into the impossibly comfortable bed, and felt their son kick against her ribs. We're in trouble, she whispered to her belly. Your father is a very dangerous man, and I think I just agreed to let him back into our lives. The baby kicked again, as if in agreement. Elena closed her eyes and tried not to think about what tomorrow would bring. Tried not to remember the feel of Victor's hand on her skin, the certainty in his voice, the darkness in his eyes that spoke of violence and protection in equal measure. Tried not to admit that part of her, a small, traitorous part, was relieved to have found him again, even if finding him might destroy them all. Elena woke to sunlight streaming through unfamiliar windows and the disorienting comfort of sheets that didn't smell like mildew and desperation. For a moment, she couldn't remember where she was. Then it all came rushing back, Victor's face in the diner, the baby kicking under his palm, the agreement she'd made in a moment of exhausted weakness. 1 month. She'd given him 1 month. She sat up slowly, her back protesting the movement despite the quality mattress. 7 months pregnant meant nothing was comfortable anymore, no matter how expensive the bed. The clock on the nightstand read 9:15, and Elena felt a spike of panic. She was supposed to be at the diner by 7 for the breakfast shift. Then she remembered she didn't work there anymore. Couldn't work there anymore. Victor had effectively removed that option the moment he'd walked through the door. A soft knock interrupted her spiraling thoughts. "Come in," she called, already knowing who it would be. Victor entered carrying a tray, and Elena hated how her heart stuttered at the sight of him. He'd clearly been up for hours, showered, dressed in dark slacks and a crisp white shirt with the sleeves rolled to his elbows. Looking every inch the successful businessman, if you ignored the shoulder holster visible when his jacket shifted. "Breakfast," he said, setting the tray on the bed beside her. "Toast, eggs, fruit. The doctor said you need protein and iron." "You already called a doctor?" "Dr. Reeves will be here at 11. She's an obstetrician, specializes in high-risk pregnancies." Victor sat on the edge of the bed, his weight shifting the mattress. "She'll do a full examination, ultrasound, blood work, whatever you need." Elena stared at the food, her stomach growling despite her desire to argue. "I have a doctor, had a doctor, at the clinic." "And how often did you see this doctor?" "Once a month, like you're supposed to." "When was your last appointment?" Elena didn't answer, which was answer enough. She'd missed the last 2 appointments because she couldn't afford to take time off work, and the clinic's hours conflicted with her shifts. "Eat," Victor said, his tone leaving no room for argument. "Then we'll talk." The eggs were perfect, fluffy and seasoned with herbs she couldn't identify. The toast was actual bakery bread, not the pre-sliced white bread she'd been living on. The fruit was fresh, probably organic. Elena told herself she was only eating because the baby needed it, but that was a lie. She was eating because it was delicious and she was starving. Victor watched her in silence, and she hated being observed like this. Hated the way his eyes tracked every bite, the satisfaction that crossed his features when she cleaned the plate. "Better?" he asked. "Don't look so smug." "I'm not smug, I'm relieved." His hand moved to her belly, that same instinctive gesture from last night. "He's active this morning. He's always active." Elena wanted to move his hand away, but couldn't quite bring herself to do it. The baby was kicking enthusiastically, as if showing off for his father. "Especially after I eat." "Good, that's healthy." Victor's thumb traced a small circle just below her ribs. "Doctor. Reeves will confirm, but that's what the research says." "You've been reading pregnancy books?" "I've been reading everything I can find since last night." He said it matter-of-factly, like it was obvious. "I have 7 months to catch up on." Something twisted in Elena's chest. This was the Victor she remembered, the one who approached everything with intense focus, who learned and adapted and controlled every variable he could. She'd seen him do it with business deals, with territory disputes, with the everyday complexities of running a criminal empire. Now he was doing it with fatherhood. "You can't control everything," she said quietly. "Babies don't work like your business deals." "I know." Victor's eyes met hers, and she saw something unfamiliar there. Uncertainty, maybe. Or fear. "But I can try. I can make sure you have the best care, the best resources. I can eliminate risks and create safety. That much I can do." "By eliminating people?" The question came out sharper than she intended. "Is that how you plan to keep him safe? By killing anyone who might pose a threat?" Victor's expression hardened. "If necessary." We're not having this conversation again, Elena." He stood, moving to the window. "You know what I am. You knew before you came to my bed, even if you didn't want to admit it. I'm not going to apologize for protecting what's mine. I'm not yours." He turned back, and the look in his eyes made her breath catch. "You're carrying my son. That makes you mine in every way that matters. Possession isn't the same as, I never said it was." Victor crossed back to the bed, his hand cupping her face with surprising gentleness. "But you are under my protection now, you and our child. That's not negotiable." Elena wanted to argue, but the baby kicked hard enough to make her wince. Victor's hand immediately moved back to her stomach, his brow furrowing. "Does that hurt?" "Sometimes, when he kicks certain spots." She guided his hand lower, where the baby's foot or elbow or some other sharp limb was pressing against her skin. "There. Feel that?" Victor's expression transformed. The hardness melted away, replaced by something raw and wondering. "That's him?" "That's him." Elena watched Victor's face, saw the exact moment when the reality of fatherhood hit him fully. "Pretty strong, right?" "Like his mother." Victor's voice was rough. "Running double shifts pregnant, living in that hellhole, refusing to ask for help even when you were—" He stopped, his jaw tightening. "You should have told me." "How?" "You would have locked me up the moment you knew I'd witnessed." I would have protected you. The intensity in his voice made her flinch. I would have moved you somewhere safe, kept you away from the business, made sure you had everything you needed. Instead, you ran, and you've been suffering for months when you didn't have to. I was protecting him from your world. By working yourself to death? By living somewhere I wouldn't house my enemies? Victor's hand tightened on her belly. You were killing yourself, Elena. Another month of that, and you both would have... He didn't finish the sentence. Didn't have to. I know. The admission cost her. I know I wasn't doing great, but I didn't know what else to do. I couldn't come back here. Couldn't pretend everything was fine when I knew what you... I'm not asking you to pretend. Victor sat beside her again, his thigh pressed against hers. I'm asking you to let me take care of you, to trust that I can keep you both safe without requiring you to accept or approve of my methods. That's an impossible ask. No. It's the only ask that matters right now. His hand moved from her belly to her hair, tucking a strand behind her ear. You don't have to love me, Elena. You don't even have to like me. But you do have to let me protect my son. Before Elena could respond, her phone buzzed from the nightstand where she'd left it. She grabbed it, grateful for the interruption, then froze when she saw the screen. 12 missed calls from Marlene, 6 text messages, increasingly frantic. Shit! Elena's hand shook as she opened the messages. Honey, are you okay? That man looked dangerous. Should I call someone? Elena, please answer. I'm worried. If you don't respond in an hour, I'm calling the police. Elena, please just let me know you're alive. I have to call her back. Elena was already dialing, her heart pounding. If Marlene called the police, if they came looking for her at Victor's penthouse. Elena, thank God! Marlene's voice was sharp with relief and anger. What the hell happened last night? Who was that man? Are you safe? I'm fine, Marlene. I'm safe. I'm sorry I didn't call sooner. Who was he? Marlene wasn't letting it go. Because he looked like the kind of man who makes people disappear. Elena glanced at Victor, who was watching her with those calculating eyes. He's the baby's father. Silence on the other end of the line. The father you've been running from, Marlene finally said. The reason you showed up here 4 months ago looking like a ghost. It's complicated. Honey, men like that are always complicated. Marlene's voice softened. Are you sure you're safe? Because if you need help, if you need somewhere to go, I'm okay. Really? Elena tried to put conviction into the words. It's not what you think. He just wants to take care of the baby. Make sure we're both healthy. Uh-huh. Marlene's skepticism was audible. And if you want to leave? Elena looked at Victor again. His expression was neutral, but she could see the tension in his shoulders. He was listening to every word. Then I'll leave, Elena said, even though she wasn't sure if it was true. 1 month. I agreed to stay 1 month until the baby comes. After that, we'll figure it out. You call me if anything changes, Marlene ordered. I mean it, Elena. Anything feels wrong. You call me immediately. I will, I promise. Elena's throat tightened. Marlene barely knew her, but she cared more than Elena's own family ever had. Thank you for everything, for worrying. Someone's got to worry about you since you clearly don't worry about yourself enough. Marlene's voice went gruff. Take care of that baby and yourself. You hear me? I hear you. Elena ended the call and set the phone down carefully. Victor was still watching her. She cares about you, he observed. She's a good person. Elena met his eyes. The kind of person who doesn't solve problems with bullets. The kind of person who would get eaten alive in my world. Victor stood straightening his cuffs, which is why she works in a diner and I run half this city. Is that supposed to be a point of pride? It's a statement of fact. Victor checked his watch. Dr. Reeves will be here in an hour. Marco is bringing your things from the motel. Is there anything else you need? Elena thought about her duffel bag with its pathetic collection of secondhand clothes and dollar store toiletries. Thought about the distance Victor was putting between them now, the walls going back up after that moment of vulnerability. No, she said. Nothing else. Victor nodded and headed for the door, paused with his hand on the frame, his back to her. I meant what I said last night, he said quietly. I will keep you both safe, whatever it takes." Then he was gone, leaving Elena alone with the breakfast tray and the uncomfortable knowledge that she believed him. Victor Romano would absolutely keep them safe. The question was what that safety would cost. Dr. Reeves arrived precisely at 11, a tall woman in her 50s with kind eyes and an air of competence that immediately put Elena at ease. She set up her equipment in the guest room with practiced efficiency, while Victor hovered in the doorway like a nervous shadow. "Mr. Romano, I'm going to need you to step out for the initial examination," Dr. Reeves said, her tone brooking no argument. "I'd prefer to stay." "I'm sure you would, but Ms. Carter needs privacy for the pelvic exam, and you need to learn that pregnancy involves a lot of moments where you don't get what you prefer." Dr. Reeves smiled to soften the words. "There's a waiting room called the hallway. Use it." Victor's jaw tightened, but he left. Elena almost laughed at the sight of a man who commanded criminal enterprises being ordered around by a 5'6" doctor. "He's intense, doctor," Reeves observed, pulling on latex gloves. "First-time father? First-time everything, I think." Elena settled back on the bed. "He just found out about the baby last night." Dr. Reeves's eyebrows rose. "Ah, that explains the panic call at 6 this morning demanding I clear my schedule." "He called you at 6? "And offered me triple my usual rate to make this a priority." Dr. Reeves began the examination, her hands gentle but thorough. "I told him I'd do it for my regular rate because threatening obstetricians is bad karma. He laughed and paid me triple anyway." Elena winced as Dr. Reeves pressed on her abdomen. "That's Victor, solving everything with money and intimidation." "Well, in this case, his money is buying you excellent prenatal care, so I'm not complaining." Dr. Reeves moved to the portable ultrasound machine. "Now let's see this baby you've been growing." The gel was cold on Elena's belly. Then the wand pressed down, and suddenly there he was, a grainy black and white image of her son, curled up and moving. "There's your baby." Dr. Reeves pointed to the screen. "Good size, active, heartbeat is strong. Everything looks healthy." Elena stared at the screen, tears pricking her eyes. She'd had one ultrasound at the clinic months ago, but this machine was clearly better. She could see details she'd missed before: the curve of the spine, the tiny fingers, the profile of the face. "Can I?" Victor's voice came from the doorway. "Can I see?" Dr. Reeves glanced at Elena, who nodded reluctantly. Victor crossed to the bed in 3 strides, his eyes locked on the screen with an intensity that made Elena's chest ache. "That's him?" His voice was rough. "That's him," Dr. Reeves confirmed. "And actually, about that, do you want to know the sex? I can confirm it now." Elena looked at Victor. His hand had found hers, gripping tight. "Yes," they said simultaneously. "Doctor." Reeves smiled. "Then congratulations, you're having a boy." Victor's hand tightened on hers almost painfully. Elena watched his face, saw something break and reform behind his eyes. When he looked at her, there were tears tracking down his cheeks. "A son," he whispered. "We're having a son." Elena's own tears spilled over. "Yeah, we are." Dr. Reeves continued the examination, pointing out details, taking measurements, but Elena barely heard her. She was too focused on Victor's face, on the way he stared at the screen like it held the secrets of the universe. This was dangerous, she realized, this moment of shared wonder, of connection. This was how he'd gotten under her skin the first time, these glimpses of humanity beneath the monster. "Everything looks good," Dr. Reeves finally said, wiping the gel from Elena's belly. "But I want to run some blood work. Your file from the clinic indicates you missed several appointments, and I want to make sure your iron levels are adequate. Also, you're underweight for this stage of pregnancy." "I've been working a lot," Elena said defensively. "You've been starving yourself." Dr. Reeves's tone was matter-of-fact, not judgmental. "Unintentionally, I'm sure, but your body has been depleting its reserves to feed the baby, and that's not sustainable. I'm prescribing prenatal vitamins, iron supplements, and a high-protein diet. I also want you on modified bed rest for the next week." "Bed rest? I can't." "You can, and you will." Dr. Reeves started packing up her equipment. "Your blood pressure is elevated, you're showing signs of exhaustion, and you're entering the 3rd trimester. Your body needs rest, Ms. Carter. Let it have it." Victor's hand was still holding hers. She'll rest. I'll make sure of it. I'm sitting right here, Elena snapped. Stop talking about me like I'm not in the room. Then stop arguing about taking care of yourself. Victor shot back. Dr. Reeves is right. You need rest, proper nutrition, and medical supervision, all of which you'll have here. Elena wanted to argue, but the exhaustion Dr. Reeves had mentioned was already pulling at her. The examination had taken less than an hour, but she felt drained. I'll be back in 3 days to check on you, doctor, Reeves said, pulling off her gloves. If you experience any cramping, bleeding, or unusual pain before then, call me immediately. Mr. Romano has my number. Of course he does, Elena muttered. Dr. Reeves smiled. He also has my stern lecture about respecting your autonomy and not being overbearing, which I delivered while you were getting dressed. She squeezed Elena's hand. You're doing fine, sweetheart. The baby is healthy. You just need to take care of yourself now. After Doctor Reeves left, Victor sat on the edge of the bed, his phone already out. What are you doing? Elena asked. Arranging for the vitamins, calling my chef to discuss high-protein meal plans, and making sure Marco understands that you're on bed rest. He typed rapidly, his focus absolute. I'm also having him bring up your things. You should have them by now. Victor, you can't just... A son. He looked up from his phone, and the expression on his face stopped her mid-sentence. We're having a son, Elena. The wonder in his voice undid something in her chest. I know. I have a son. He said it like he was testing the words, learning their weight. A boy. My boy. Our boy, Elena corrected softly. Our boy. Victor set down his phone and moved closer, his hand settling on her belly with that same careful reverence. I never thought... I didn't let myself imagine. Imagine what? This. Any of this. His thumb traced circles on her stomach. A family. Someone to... He stopped, his jaw working. My father was a bastard. Cold, cruel. He saw children as tools or disappointments. Nothing in between. Elena had known Victor's childhood had been bad. He'd mentioned it in passing once or twice, usually when he'd had too much whiskey and his defenses were down. But he'd never elaborated. I won't be him, Victor said fiercely. I won't do to our son what was done to me. Then you have to give him a different life, Elena said. Not this one. Not the violence and the fear and the constant danger. I can protect him from the danger. But not from knowing what you are. What you do. Elena covered his hand with hers. He'll grow up watching you, learning from you. And if all he sees is violence as the answer, that's what he'll become. Victor was quiet for a long moment. What do you want me to do, Elena? Walk away from everything I've built? Everything I am? I want you to want better for him. I want you to choose him over the empire. I can have both. Can you? Elena sat up, ignoring the protest from her back. Can you really keep us separate from your world? Or will there always be enemies who see us as leverage? Will there always be threats that require you to... She couldn't finish the sentence. There will always be threats, Victor said bluntly. That's the reality. Whether I'm in this life or not, I've made enemies. They don't forget. They don't forgive. The only thing keeping you safe is my power, my willingness to destroy anyone who touches what's mine. So we're prisoners of your choices. You're protected by my choices. He stood, frustration evident in every line of his body. I know you want some fairy tale where we can just walk away, live a normal life, pretend the past doesn't exist. But that's not reality, Elena. Reality is that I have blood on my hands, and there are people who want revenge for that blood. And the only thing standing between them and you is me. Maybe if you stopped adding to the blood, then we'd be dead within a week. Victor's voice was cold now, the vulnerability from earlier completely gone. You want to know why I do what I do? Why I'm ruthless? Because mercy gets you killed in this world. Hesitation gets you buried. I learned that when I was 14 and watched my uncle gut my father like a fish because the old man had gotten soft. Elena flinched. Victor, you think I'm a monster. Fine, but I'm a monster who keeps his family alive. He headed for the door. Rest, eat. Take care of our son. I have work to do. Running from this conversation won't change anything, Elena called after him. Victor paused in the doorway. Neither will having it. You want me to be someone I'm not. I want you to accept who I am. We're at an impasse. So what do? We survive the next month. We bring our son into this world safely. Then we figure out the rest. He glanced back at her, and for just a moment, she saw past the walls to the man underneath. I may be a monster, Elena, but I'm a monster who loves you. That hasn't changed. Then he was gone, leaving Elena alone with the echo of words he'd never said before. Words that terrified her more than any threat ever could, because loving Victor Romano meant accepting darkness. And she wasn't sure she could do that, even for the baby growing inside her, even for the life they'd created together. The rest of the day passed in a strange limbo. Marco delivered her duffel bag, which looked even more pathetic in the luxury of Victor's penthouse. Elena unpacked her meager belongings. 3 changes of clothes, a toothbrush, a worn paperback she'd read a dozen times. Everything she owned fit in a single drawer. A chef arrived around 3, a woman named Rosa, who clucked over Elena like a worried hen and insisted on making her a protein-rich lunch despite Elena's protests that she wasn't hungry. The food was delicious, and Elena ate more than she intended. Victor didn't return. By evening, Elena was restless and worried. She wandered through the penthouse, relearning the space she'd once shared with him. His bedroom door was closed, and she didn't open it. Didn't want to see the bed they'd shared, the bathroom where he'd washed her hair, the closet where half her clothes had hung before she'd fled in the middle of the night. She found him finally on the balcony, a glass of whiskey in his hand, staring out at the city lights. "You're supposed to be resting," he said without turning around. "I'm pregnant, not an invalid." Elena leaned against the doorframe. "And you're avoiding me. I'm giving you space." "Bullshit. You're sulking because I won't fall in line like one of your soldiers." That got a reaction. Victor turned, his expression hard. "I don't sulk." "Then what do you call disappearing for 6 hours after declaring your love and walking away?" "Strategic retreat." He took a drink. "And I didn't declare anything. I stated a fact." "That you love me." "Yes." No hesitation, no softening, just flat acknowledgement. "I have since the night I found you trying to pick the lock on my car." Elena remembered that night. She'd been desperate, broke, trying to steal from the wrong man in the wrong parking garage. Victor had caught her mid-theft, and instead of calling the police or worse, he'd offered her dinner. She'd thought he was crazy. Turned out she was right. "You don't know me well enough to love me," she said. "I know you better than anyone." Victor set down his glass. "I know you're stubborn to the point of self-destruction. I know you'd rather suffer than ask for help. I know you bite your lip when you're thinking and you hum off-key when you cook. I know you're terrified of storms and you can't sleep without white noise and you have nightmares about your mother." Elena's chest tightened. "That doesn't mean—" "I know you're brave enough to run from the most dangerous man you've ever met to protect a child you'd never even seen. Brave enough to work yourself into the ground rather than come back to someone who terrifies you. Brave enough to stand here and tell me I'm not good enough for our son, even knowing I could make you disappear with a phone call." Victor closed the distance between them. "So yes, Elena, I know you, and I love you. Those 2 facts aren't in conflict. Love isn't supposed to come with threats. I'm not threatening you. I'm stating reality." His hand cupped her face. "I would never hurt you, but I am dangerous, and pretending otherwise helps no one." Elena should pull away, should maintain the distance, the boundaries. Instead, she leaned into his touch, hating herself for the weakness. "I don't know how to do this," she whispered. "I don't know how to let you in while keeping him safe from what you are." "Then we figure it out together." Victor's thumb traced her cheekbone. "You have a month to decide if you can live with what I am. I have a month to prove I can be the father our son deserves. At the end of that month, we choose. And if we choose differently—" Pain flickered across his features. "Then I'll let you go. Give you money, protection, whatever you need to raise him safely. But I won't abandon my son, Elena. I'll be part of his life, whether you're in mine or not." It wasn't the answer she wanted, but it was honest. Victor had never lied to her, even when the truth was ugly. "1 month," she agreed. "Then we choose." Victor leaned down, his forehead resting against hers. 1 month. They stood like that as the city lights glittered below, two people bound by a child and separated by everything else. The baby kicked between them, a reminder of what was at stake. Whatever happened in the next month, everything was about to change. For all of them. 2 weeks passed in a strange rhythm of domesticity and tension. Elena spent her days resting as ordered, reading pregnancy books Victor had delivered by the dozen, and watching the city move below while her son grew restless inside her. Victor came and went like the tide, present for breakfast, gone during the day handling business he never discussed, returning for dinner with that careful distance between them that felt like walking on glass. Dr. Reeves visited twice more, each time pronouncing both mother and baby healthy. Elena's iron levels were improving, her blood pressure stabilizing. The bed rest was working, even if the forced inactivity made her want to climb the walls. "You're doing well," Dr. Reeves said during her third visit, packing away the ultrasound equipment after another check. "Baby's measuring right on track. How are you feeling?" "Like a prisoner in a very nice cell," Elena admitted. She was sitting on the couch in the living room now, having graduated from strict bed rest to limited activity, which Victor interpreted as, "You can move from the bedroom to the living room, but that's it." Dr. Reeves laughed. "I imagine Mr. Romano is taking the restrictions seriously. He's taking everything seriously." Elena shifted, trying to find a comfortable position. Impossible at 31 weeks. "Yesterday he had Marco follow me to the bathroom. He was making sure you didn't fall." Victor's voice came from the doorway. He'd arrived home early, still in the dark suit that meant he'd been meeting with people Elena didn't want to think about. "You were dizzy that morning." "I was dizzy once, 3 days ago." "Once is enough." Victor crossed to them, his hand automatically moving to Elena's belly. The baby kicked in response, and Victor's expression softened the way it always did when he felt his son move. "Dr. Reeves, everything looks good." "Perfect. Though I do want to discuss birth plans." Dr. Reeves pulled out her tablet. "You're entering your 32nd week, which means we need to start thinking about delivery, hospital preferences, pain management options, who you want in the room. The best hospital in the city," Victor said immediately. "Private room, best doctors available." "I was asking Elena," Dr. Reeves said mildly. Elena bit back a smile. She liked how Dr. Reeves refused to be intimidated by Victor. "St. Catherine's has a good maternity ward, and I want an epidural. Definitely an epidural." "Noted. And who do you want in the delivery room?" Elena glanced at Victor. They hadn't discussed this, hadn't really discussed anything beyond the immediate day-to-day survival of living in the same space while trying not to destroy each other. "I don't have anyone else," she said quietly. "No family, no friends it would just be him, if he wants to be there." Victor's hand tightened on her belly. "I'll be there. Even if there's business, nothing is more important than this." His voice was firm. "When you go into labor, everything else stops. I don't care what's happening, who needs me, what deal is on the table. I'll be there." Dr. Reeves made notes on her tablet. "Good. I've seen too many fathers miss their children's births because of work. Don't be one of them." She stood, gathering her equipment. "I'll see you next week. Continue the vitamins, keep resting, and call me if anything feels off." After she left, Elena and Victor sat in silence. His hand was still on her belly, feeling their son shift and kick. "You meant that," Elena finally said, "about being there." "Did you think I wouldn't?" "I don't know what to think anymore." She covered his hand with hers. 2 weeks ago you were a ghost I thought I'd never see again. Now you're planning to be in the delivery room. 2 weeks ago I didn't know I was going to be a father." Victor's thumb traced circles on her skin. "Everything changed that night, Elena. Everything. For me too." She hesitated, then added, "I've been thinking about names." Victor's attention sharpened. "What names?" "I don't know. Nothing feels right." Elena leaned back into the couch cushions. "What about you? Any family names you want to use?" Victor's expression went cold. "No, nothing for my family. Our son deserves better than to carry that legacy." "Then we pick something new, something that's just his." They sat with that for a moment, the weight of naming a person settling between them. Outside, the sun was setting, painting the city in shades of orange and red. "Leonardo," Victor said suddenly. "It means brave lion." strong, but also an artist, a thinker, someone who creates instead of destroys. Elena turned the name over in her mind. Leo. I like that. Leonardo Romano. Leonardo Carter Romano, Victor corrected. He should have both our names. Something warm bloomed in Elena's chest. You'd give him my name too? You're his mother. You're carrying him, growing him, sacrificing for him. He should carry your name as much as mine. Victor's hand moved to cup her face. Unless you'd rather... No, Carter Romano is perfect. Elena's eyes stung with sudden tears. Damn pregnancy hormones. Leonardo Carter Romano. Leo. Leo, Victor repeated, and the tenderness in his voice undid her completely. Elena leaned forward, closing the distance between them, and kissed him. It was supposed to be brief, just a moment of connection, but Victor's hand slid into her hair, and suddenly she was drowning in him. In the familiar taste of whiskey and mint, the solid warmth of his body, the way he kissed her like she was oxygen and he'd been suffocating. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Victor's forehead rested against hers. Elena, he said, and her name sounded like a prayer. If you're not ready for this, tell me now, because I'm barely holding on here. She should pull back, should maintain the boundaries she'd been so careful to construct over the past 2 weeks, but her body was already making the decision, shifting closer, her hands sliding under his suit jacket. I'm 8 months pregnant and perpetually exhausted, she said against his mouth. But I'm also desperately tired of sleeping alone. Victor made a rough sound in his throat. Are you sure? The baby? Dr. Reeves said it's fine. Safe, even. Elena bit his lower lip gently. Unless you don't want to... Victor stood in one fluid motion, lifting Elena with him despite her size. She yelped in surprise, grabbing his shoulders. I've wanted to since the moment I saw you in that diner, he said, already moving toward his bedroom. Every night you've been here sleeping in that guest room has been torture. Then why didn't you Because you needed space. Time to decide if you could trust me. He shouldered open the bedroom door. But if you're telling me that time is over, it's over, Elena confirmed. And then they were on the bed, and Victor's hands were everywhere, and she stopped thinking entirely. Later, wrapped in expensive sheets with Victor's arm around her and their son kicking contentedly between them, Elena felt something she hadn't felt in months. Safe. Not just physically safe, but emotionally, in a way that terrified her almost as much as it comforted her. This doesn't fix everything, she said into the darkness. I know. Victor's hand traced lazy patterns on her hip. But it's a start. You still haven't told me what you do all day, where you go, who you meet with. Victor was quiet for a moment. Do you really want to know? Did she? Knowing meant complicity, meant accepting her role as the crime boss's woman, the mother of his heir. But not knowing meant living in willful ignorance, and that had nearly gotten her killed once already. Yes, she said. I want to know. Victor shifted, propping himself up on one elbow to look at her. I run operations across 6 territories. Gambling, mostly. Some protection, some import-export that's legal enough to pass scrutiny. I have lieutenants who handle day-to-day, but I oversee everything. And the violence? Happens when someone challenges my authority or threatens my people. He said it matter-of-factly, like discussing the weather. I try to avoid it. Violence is expensive and draws attention, but sometimes it's necessary. Like with that woman, the one I saw you... Like with her. Victor's expression hardened. She sold out 3 of my men to a rival organization. They were ambushed, tortured for information, then executed. Their families still don't know where the bodies are. Elena's hand moved protectively to her belly. And that justified killing her? It prevented it from happening again. Victor's hand covered hers. In my world, Elena, mercy is seen as weakness. If I'd let her live, if I'd shown any hesitation, it would have been open season on my people. More would have died. So you kill to prevent killing. I kill to protect my own, just like I'll kill to protect you and Leo. He said it without inflection, a simple statement of fact. That's who I am. That's what I do. Elena wanted to argue, to find the moral high ground, but exhaustion was pulling at her, And deep down, she understood the logic even if she hated it. In Victor's world, weakness was fatal. Mercy got you buried. I still don't like it, she whispered. You don't have to like it. You just have to accept that it's reality. Victor pulled her closer, his hand splaying across her belly. But I meant what I said. This life doesn't touch Leo. He grows up clean, safe, away from all of it. How? You can't just... I'm already working on it. Victor's voice was quiet but determined. Legitimizing operations, shifting things so that by the time he's old enough to ask questions, there are clean answers. It won't happen overnight, but it will happen. Elena turned to face him fully. You'd really do that? Change everything you've built? For him? Yes. Victor's hand moved to cup her face. For both of you, I'd burn it all down and start over. Elena searched his eyes in the darkness, looking for the lie. She didn't find one. Victor Romano might be many things, dangerous, ruthless, unforgiving, but he didn't lie. Not to her. 1 month, she said, you have 3 more weeks to prove you mean it. Then I'll spend every one of them proving it. He kissed her forehead, her cheek, her mouth. Sleep, Elena. You need rest. She wanted to argue, but her body was already surrendering to exhaustion. She fell asleep wrapped in Victor's arms, feeling their sun kick between them, and for the first time in months, she didn't have nightmares. The next morning, Elena woke to an empty bed and the sound of raised voices from somewhere else in the penthouse. She sat up carefully, her back protesting, and reached for the robe Victor had left draped over the chair. It was his, far too large, and it smelled like him. The voices were coming from Victor's study. Elena moved toward them, one hand on her belly, already recognizing the anger in Victor's tone. I don't care what Volkov wants, Victor was saying, his voice sharp enough to cut. He doesn't get to dictate terms to me. He's not asking, boss. That was Marco's voice, tense. He's demanding. Says if you don't meet with him by Friday, he's taking it as a declaration of war. Then we go to war. Victor, think about this. I am thinking about it. The sound of glass shattering. I'm thinking about the fact that Alexei Volkov has been pushing boundaries for months, testing my patience, and now he thinks he can threaten me? In my own city? Elena pushed open the study door. 3 men turned to look at her. Victor, Marco, and another man she didn't recognize. Victor's expression immediately shifted from fury to concern. You should be resting, he said, already moving toward her. I woke up to shouting. Elena looked past him to the shattered whiskey glass on the floor. What's going on? Nothing that concerns you. If it's making you throw things before breakfast, it concerns me. Elena held her ground. Who's Volkov, and why is he threatening you? Victor's jaw tightened. Alexei Volkov runs the Russian operations in the North District. We've had an understanding for years, but recently he's been expanding into my territory. And now he wants a meeting, Marco added, then fell silent when Victor shot him a look. A meeting about what? Elena asked. About boundaries, territory, the usual posturing. Victor took her arm gently. But it's nothing you need to worry about. I'll handle it. When's the meeting? Friday night, but I'm not going. Why not? Because it's a trap. Victor guided her back toward the bedroom. Volkov doesn't want to negotiate. He wants to see if I'll walk into an ambush, show weakness. So send someone else. Marco can... If I send Marco, it shows I'm afraid to meet Volkov face to face. Victor's hand settled on her belly. In my world, that's as good as admitting defeat. Elena felt their son kick hard. And if you go and it is a trap, then I deal with it. Victor's voice was calm, but his eyes were hard. I've survived worse than Alexei Volkov. Not with a son on the way, you haven't. Elena grabbed his hand. Victor, you can't. If something happens to you, nothing will happen to me. He pulled her close, his hand cradling the back of her head. I've been doing this for 15 years, Elena. I know how to navigate a threat. By walking into potential ambushes? By showing I'm not afraid, that I won't be intimidated. He kissed her hair. Trust me. I'll take precautions. Marco and 6 others will be with me. We'll meet in neutral territory, public place. Volkov won't try anything with that many witnesses. Elena wanted to argue, to make him promise he wouldn't go, but she could see the resolve in his eyes. This was part of his world, the dangerous dance of power and territory that she'd spent months trying to escape. "When is it?" she asked quietly. "Friday at 8. Victor's hand moved to her belly. "I'll be back before midnight. You won't even know I'm gone." "I'll know." Elena looked up at him, "and I'll be terrified the entire time. Then I'll give you Marco's number. He'll update you every hour." Victor's expression softened. "I won't let anything happen to me, Elena. I have too much to come home to now." The words should have comforted her. Instead, they made the fear worse, because Victor having something to lose made him vulnerable in ways he'd never been before. And men like Alexei Volkov would absolutely exploit that vulnerability. Friday arrived too quickly. Elena spent the day trying to distract herself with books and television, but nothing worked. By 7 o'clock, she was pacing the living room despite Dr. Reeves's orders to rest, her anxiety manifesting in constant movement. Victor emerged from his bedroom at 7:30, and Elena's breath caught. He was dressed entirely in black, suit, shirt, tie, and he was wearing his shoulder holster openly. The gun sat against his ribs like a promise of violence. "You look terrified," he observed, crossing to her. "Because I am." Elena grabbed his jacket. "Don't go, please. Just send Marco or postpone, or—" "I have to go." Victor's hand settled on her hips. "But I will come back. I promise you that." "You can't promise that. You don't know what Volkov—" Victor silenced her with a kiss, deep and claiming and desperate. When he pulled back, his forehead rested against hers. "I love you," he said. "I should have said it before. Should have told you every day since you came back. I love you, Elena. You and Leo. You're everything." Tears streamed down Elena's face. "Then stay. Choose us over this meeting." "I'm choosing you by going." Victor's hands moved to cup her face. "If I back down now, I look weak. And weak men in my position don't survive. Their families don't survive. I need Volkov to understand that I'm still dangerous, still in control. That threatening me has consequences. And if he doesn't care, then he'll learn." Victor kissed her once more, gentle this time. "Marco will call you every hour, and I'll be home before you know it." He pulled away, heading for the door, and Elena felt panic rising in her throat. This was wrong. Everything about this felt wrong. "Victor, wait." He turned back, one hand on the doorframe. "If something happens," Elena's voice broke, "if you don't come back, I'm coming back." He said it with absolute certainty. "Nothing in this world could keep me from coming back to you." Then he was gone, and Elena was alone with her fear and their son kicking anxiously inside her. The first hour passed like torture. Marco called at 8:15, his voice professional. "We've arrived at the location. No signs of trouble. Victor's going in now." The second hour was worse. Marco called at 9:15. "Meeting's still ongoing. Everything's calm." By 10 o'clock, Elena was back to pacing. Her back ached, her feet were swelling, and the baby was moving constantly, like he could sense her anxiety. When Marco's call came at 10:15, she grabbed the phone before the first ring finished. "Status?" she demanded. "Meeting's breaking up. Should be heading out in 5—" Marco's voice cut off, then shouting, and the unmistakable sound of gunfire. Elena's blood turned to ice. "Marco? Marco!" The line was chaos, more shots, men yelling, the screech of tires. Then Marco's voice, tight with tension. "We're under fire. Multiple shooters. Get to the panic room. Now." "What about Victor?" "Elena, panic room. Move." The call disconnected. For a moment, Elena stood frozen. Then training she didn't remember receiving kicked in. Victor had shown her the panic room during her first week back. A reinforced space behind a hidden door in his bedroom, stocked with supplies and a separate phone line. She was halfway to the bedroom when pain exploded across her abdomen. It felt like someone had wrapped a belt around her belly and was tightening it harder and harder. Elena gasped, doubling over, one hand braced against the wall. Braxton Hicks, she told herself, just practice contractions. Dr. Reeves had warned her about these, but when the pain didn't ease after 30 seconds, when it kept building until she couldn't breathe, Elena knew this wasn't practice. She was in labor. "No," she whispered. "No, no, not now. Please not now." But her body wasn't listening. Another contraction hit, stronger than the first, and Elena's knees buckled. She caught herself on the hallway table, breathing through the pain the way the pregnancy books had described. When it passed, she fumbled for her phone, dialed Dr. Reeves with shaking hands. Elena? What's wrong? The doctor's voice was sharp with concern. Contractions, Elena managed. Strong ones, 5 minutes apart. How long has this been happening? Just started, but they're intense. Something's wrong. Another wave of pain hit, and Elena bit back a scream. I'm calling an ambulance. Where's Mr. Romano? He's... Gunfire. Marco's panicked voice. Victor in danger. He's not here. But I can't... Dr. Reeves, I can't get to the panic room. I can't... Forget the panic room. Can you get to the front door? Elena looked down the hallway. It felt like miles. But she forced herself to move, one hand on her belly, the other bracing against the wall. I'm trying, she gasped. Ambulance is en route. Stay on the line with me. Breathe through the contractions. You're doing great. Another contraction hit, and this time Elena did scream. Something was definitely wrong. The pain was too intense, too fast. Labor wasn't supposed to escalate this quickly. She made it to the living room before her water broke in a gush that soaked through her clothes. Elena looked down and her heart stopped. There was blood. Too much blood. Dr. Reeves, she whispered. I'm bleeding. The doctor's calm demeanor cracked. How much? A lot. There's so much. Elena's vision was graying at the edges. Shock, maybe, or blood loss. Something's wrong with the baby. Elena, listen to me. You need to lie down, right now. Elevate your feet. The ambulance will be there in 3 minutes. But Elena couldn't move, couldn't do anything but stare at the blood pooling beneath her and think about Victor, about whether he was alive or dead, about whether their son would be born into a world where his father was already gone, about whether she'd survive long enough to find out. The world tilted. Elena felt herself falling, felt the impact as her body hit the floor, felt another contraction tear through her with vicious intensity. Then darkness rushed in, and she knew nothing at all. Elena woke to the smell of antiseptic and the steady beep of monitors. Everything hurt. Her abdomen, her back, her head. She tried to move and immediately regretted it as pain lanced through her body. Don't. A familiar voice, rough and strained. Don't move. You're safe. Elena's eyes focused slowly. Victor sat in a chair beside her hospital bed. And he looked like he'd been through hell. His shirt was torn and blood-stained, his face bruised, a bandage wrapped around his left forearm. But he was alive, breathing. Here. You came back, she whispered. Of course I came back. His hand found hers, gripping tight. I told you nothing could keep me away. Elena's free hand moved to her belly and found it dramatically smaller, flatter, empty. Panic exploded through her chest. The baby. Where's the baby? Where's Leo? He's alive, Victor's voice cracked. He's in the NICU, born at 32 weeks, 3 pounds, 8 ounces. I want to see him. You will, soon. The doctors need to make sure you're stable first. Victor's thumb traced circles on the back of her hand. You lost a lot of blood, Elena. You had a placental abruption. If the ambulance had been 5 minutes later... He couldn't finish the sentence. Elena watched a man who'd killed without hesitation struggle to say the words that terrified him most. But I'm here, she said. We're both here. Barely. Victor stood, pacing to the window. I should have been there. Should have canceled the meeting, stayed home, been with you when... What happened at the meeting? Victor's expression went dark. Exactly what I expected. Volkov tried to have us ambushed in the parking garage. 6 shooters, 2 cars blocking our exit. He wanted to send a message. But you're alive. Because Marco is paranoid, and I'm hard to kill. Victor touched the bandage on his arm. Caught a bullet, but it's superficial. Lost 2 men, though. Good men with families. Elena's heart clenched. I'm sorry. Don't be sorry. Be angry. Victor turned back to her, and the fury in his eyes was volcanic. Volkov crossed a line. He knew about the baby. Must have had someone watching the penthouse. He timed the ambush specifically so I'd be away from you, so you'd be vulnerable. He wanted to hurt me to get to you. He wanted to kill you. Both of you. Victor's hands were shaking. If I'd been 30 minutes later getting back, if the ambulance hadn't... But it did. And we're alive. Elena pushed herself up despite the pain. Victor, I need to see him. Our son. I need to know he's okay. Victor hesitated, then nodded. I'll get a wheelchair. But Elena, you need to prepare yourself. He's small, very small, and he's on machines to help him breathe. I don't care. He's ours, and I need to see him. 10 minutes later, Victor was pushing her wheelchair through the hospital corridors toward the NICU. Elena's entire body ached, but she didn't care. Nothing mattered except seeing her son. The NICU was a warren of incubators and monitors, premature babies fighting for life in plastic boxes. A nurse met them at the entrance, her smile kind but professional. Miss Carter, Mr. Romano, Leonardo is stable. He's breathing with assistance, but his vitals are strong. She led them to an incubator in the corner. He's a fighter. Elena's breath caught. Inside the incubator was the smallest, most perfect human being she'd ever seen. Leonardo Carter Romano was barely bigger than Victor's hand, his skin almost translucent, his tiny chest rising and falling with the help of a ventilator. Wires and tubes connected him to machines that beeped steadily, monitoring every breath, every heartbeat. But his eyes were closed peacefully, and one miniature fist was curled near his face, and Elena fell completely, irrevocably in love. He's beautiful, she whispered. He's perfect. Victor's voice was thick with emotion. I sat with him for 3 hours while you were in surgery. Talked to him. Told him he needed to fight, that his mother was fighting too, and we were both coming back for him. Elena looked up at Victor and saw tears tracking down his face. This man who'd killed without remorse, who ruled a criminal empire through fear and violence, was crying over a 3-pound baby. Can I touch him? She asked the nurse. Through the ports, carefully. The nurse opened the small circular openings in the incubator. Skin contact is good for preemies. It helps them regulate their temperature and heart rate. Elena reached through with trembling hands, her fingers stroking Leo's impossibly small arm. His skin was warm, soft as silk. He shifted slightly at her touch, and Elena's heart nearly burst. Hi, baby, she whispered. It's me. It's Mama. I'm so sorry I couldn't keep you safe longer. So sorry you had to come out early. He doesn't blame you. Victor's hand covered hers through the port. And neither do I. This was Volkov's doing. All of it. The rage in his voice made Elena look up. What are you going to do? What I should have done months ago. Victor's expression was carved from stone. Eliminate the threat permanently. You're going to kill him. I'm going to destroy him. His organization, his territory, everyone who stood with him. Victor's hand tightened on hers. He came after my family. There are no rules anymore. No boundaries. Elena wanted to argue, to tell him violence would only breed more violence. But looking at their son, so small, so fragile, fighting for every breath because someone had tried to kill them, she couldn't find the words. I won't let him hurt you again, Victor continued, his voice low and deadly. Either of you. Whatever it takes. Whatever I have to burn down. The nurse cleared her throat diplomatically. Ms. Carter, you should rest. You can come back in a few hours, but your body needs recovery time. Elena didn't want to leave. Wanted to stay beside Leo's incubator forever, making sure he kept breathing. But exhaustion was pulling at her, and the pain medication was wearing off. I'll stay with him, Victor said. I won't leave him alone, I promise. Elena looked between her son and the man she loved, these two people who'd become her entire world. You promise you'll call me if anything changes? The second anything changes. Victor kissed her forehead. Rest. Get strong. Leo needs his mother healthy. Back in her room, Elena slept fitfully, waking every hour to check her phone for updates from Victor. Each time, the message was the same. Leo was stable, breathing well, no complications. Each time, Elena cried from relief and fear in equal measure. Dr. Reeves visited the next morning, her expression serious but not unkind. You're lucky to be alive, she said bluntly, checking Elena's vitals. Placental abruption at 32 weeks, combined with the stress you were under, your body just couldn't sustain the pregnancy anymore. Will I be able to have more children? The question slipped out before Elena could stop it. Dr. Reeves smiled. Yes. With proper monitoring and care, there's no reason you can't have healthy pregnancies in the future. But let's focus on getting you recovered and getting Leonardo strong enough to go home first. How long will he have to stay here? Hard to say. Premature babies are unpredictable. If he continues progressing well, maybe 4 to 6 weeks. But it could be longer if complications develop. Dr. Reeves squeezed Elena's hand. Try not to worry. He's in excellent hands. After Dr. Reeves left, Elena forced herself out of bed despite the pain. She needed to see Leo again, needed to confirm he was still breathing, still fighting. She found Victor exactly where she'd left him, sitting beside Leo's incubator, one hand through the port resting on their son's chest. He looked like he hadn't moved in hours. Probably hadn't. You should sleep, Elena said, settling into the chair beside him. I'll sleep when this is over. Victor's voice was hoarse from disuse. When Volkov is dead, and my family is safe. Victor, you can't. I can, and I will. He finally looked at her, and the exhaustion in his eyes was staggering. I've already set it in motion. Marco is coordinating with our people. By tomorrow night, Alexei Volkov won't exist anymore. And then what? Someone else takes his place and comes after us for revenge? No one will come after us. Victor's voice was flat, emotionless. Because I'm making an example. Anyone who threatens my family will face the same fate, complete and total destruction. Elena looked at their son, so small and helpless. Is this the world you want him to grow up in? One where his father solves problems with mass murder? I want him to grow up in a world where he's safe. Victor stood pacing the small space. Where he can sleep without fear. Where his mother doesn't go into premature labor from stress because someone is trying to kill her. That's not... It is exactly what happened. Victor's hands were shaking again. You went into labor because you were terrified. Because I went to that meeting and left you vulnerable. Because Volkov saw an opportunity and took it. You couldn't have known. I should have known. The words exploded out of him. I should have anticipated. Should have protected you better. Should have... His voice cracked. You almost died, Elena. Both of you. Because I wasn't there. Elena stood carefully, crossing to him. But we didn't die. We're here. We're alive, and Leo is going to be fine. You don't know that. He's 3 pounds, on a ventilator, and Victor's breath hitched. He's so small, so fragile. What if something happens? What if I lose him before... Stop. Elena grabbed his face, forcing him to look at her. Stop catastrophizing. Leo is strong. He's a fighter, just like his father. His father is a monster who puts his family in danger. His father is a man who loves fiercely and protects what's his. Elena's thumbs traced his cheekbones. Yes, you're dangerous. Yes, you've done terrible things. But you're also the man sitting beside our son's incubator for 12 hours straight because you can't bear to leave him alone. Victor's forehead dropped to hers. I don't know how to do this. How to be what he needs. None of us do. We figure it out as we go. Elena pulled back slightly. But Victor, you have to promise me something. Anything. Promise me that whatever you do to Volkov, it ends there. No escalation. No war that puts more people in danger. You eliminate the threat, and then you're done. Victor was quiet for a long moment. I can't promise that. Why not? Because eliminating Volkov creates a power vacuum. Other organizations will move in, try to claim his territory. I have to be ready to defend what's mine, or we'll be right back where we started. So it never ends. Elena felt tears burning her eyes. You'll always have enemies, always have threats, always have reasons to kill. Yes. Victor's honesty was brutal. That's the reality of what I am, what I've built. Then tear it down. The words came out desperate. Walk away. Sell everything. Disappear. Start over somewhere safe. There is nowhere safe. Victor's hand moved to cup her face. My enemies would follow, and without my power, without my resources, I couldn't protect you. We'd be hunted, vulnerable. So we're trapped. We're protected. He kissed her forehead. I know it's not the life you wanted, not the fairy tale ending, but it's the reality we have. A monitor beeped sharply, and both of them whipped around to Leo's incubator. A nurse was already moving toward them, her expression concerned. What's wrong? Victor demanded. His oxygen levels are dropping. We need to adjust the ventilator. The nurse was already making changes, her hands moving efficiently. It's not uncommon with preemies. His lungs are still developing. Elena watched the numbers on the monitor, watched them drop lower, 92, 90, 88, and felt her heart stop. Do something, she heard herself say. Please, he can't breathe. Do something. We are. The nurse's voice was calm but firm. Step back, please. Give us room to work. Victor pulled Elena back as two more nurses descended on the incubator. They adjusted tubes, changed settings, worked with practiced precision while Elena's world narrowed to those numbers on the screen. 86, 84, 82. He's crashing, one nurse said. Get Dr. Patterson, now! Elena's knees gave out. Victor caught her, holding her upright, but she could feel him shaking too, could feel the terror radiating off him in waves. He'll be okay, Victor whispered, and Elena didn't know if he was reassuring her or himself. He's strong. He'll be okay. The numbers kept dropping. 80, 78. A doctor rushed in, already issuing orders. More adjustments, more interventions. Leo's tiny body jerked as they worked on him, and Elena made a sound she didn't recognize, animal, desperate. I can't lose him. She gripped Victor's shirt. I can't. We just found him. We're not losing him. Victor's voice was steel. He's a Romano. We don't give up. We fight. As if he heard his father, Leo's oxygen levels stabilized. Slowly, agonizingly, the numbers began to climb. 80, 84, 88. There we go, the doctor murmured. That's it. Come on, little fighter. 90, 92, 95. The tension in the room eased fractionally. The doctor made a few more adjustments, then stepped back. He's stable. We'll monitor him closely, but the crisis has passed. He looked at Elena and Victor. This is normal with premature infants. Their systems are still developing. There will be ups and downs. How many downs? Elena asked, her voice breaking. Impossible to say. Every baby is different. The doctor's expression was kind, but he responded well to intervention. That's a good sign. After the medical team dispersed, Elena and Victor stood beside the incubator in silence. Leo slept peacefully, unaware of how close he'd come to disaster, unaware that his parents were falling apart beside him. I can't do this, Elena whispered. I can't watch him struggle like this. Can't see him fight for every breath. Yes, you can. Victor's arm came around her shoulders. Because he needs you. We both do. I'm not strong enough. You are. Victor turned her to face him. You survived months alone, pregnant and afraid. You survived a placental abruption and emergency surgery. You're the strongest person I know, Elena. Don't tell me you can't do this. Elena looked up at him, this dangerous man who'd become her anchor. What if we lose him anyway? What if all this fighting isn't enough? Then we'll survive that too, together. Victor's hand moved to cup her face. But we're not going to lose him. I won't allow it. You can't control everything. Watch me. The intensity in his voice was almost frightening. I've built an empire through sheer will and refusal to accept defeat. I'm not about to start accepting it now. Despite everything, Elena felt a small smile tug at her lips. You're insane. Probably. Victor kissed her, gentle and claiming at once. But you're insane. And I'm his. And that means something. They stood together beside their son's incubator, two broken people holding each other up, while the smallest person in the world fought battles they couldn't fight for him. And in that moment, Elena understood something fundamental. This was their life now, the danger, the fear, the constant threat, but also the fierce love, the unbreakable bond, the family they'd created against all odds. She didn't have to like it, but she had to accept it, because the alternative was losing them both. And that was simply not an option. Over the next week, Elena and Victor fell into a routine. She would spend mornings in the NICU, talking to Leo, touching him through the incubator ports, reading to him from the baby books Victor had bought by the dozen. Victor would arrive in the afternoons, always carrying food because Elena kept forgetting to eat, and he'd sit beside their son for hours, one hand resting on Leo's chest, feeling each breath. Nights were the hardest. Neither of them could sleep at the hospital, but neither could bear to leave. They'd take turns dozing in the uncomfortable chairs, jolting awake at every alarm, every beep of the monitors. Dr. Patterson assured them this was normal. "He's doing well," the doctor would say during his twice-daily check-ins. "Weight is up to 4 pounds 2 ounces. Lungs are developing. These oxygen dips are concerning but manageable." Manageable. Elena had grown to hate that word. Because manageable meant terrifying, meant watching her son turn blue because his lungs weren't ready for the world yet. Meant holding Victor's hand until both their knuckles were white while nurses worked to stabilize their baby. It was during one of these episodes, day 9, Elena had lost count, that Marco appeared in the NICU doorway. He looked uncomfortable in the sterile medical environment, but his expression was carefully neutral. "Boss, need a word." Victor didn't take his eyes off Leo. "Not now. It's about Volkov." Victor's attention sharpened. He glanced at Elena, and she saw the question in his eyes. She nodded, even though she didn't want to hear this, didn't want to know what Victor had ordered done. They stepped into the hallway, and Elena followed despite Victor's look that said she should stay with Leo. She needed to know, needed to understand what her agreement to stay had cost. "He's dead," Marco said simply. "Volkov and his top 5 lieutenants, clean, quick, no witnesses." "When?" Victor's voice was flat. 3 hours ago, car bomb in the warehouse district. Made it look like an internal dispute gone wrong." Marco's eyes flicked to Elena, then back to Victor. "The Russians are scattered. No one's claiming leadership. Most are already running." "Good." Victor's jaw was tight. "And our losses?" "None. It went exactly as planned." Marco hesitated. "There's something else." Victor waited. "Volkov had a daughter, 12 years old. She's in protective custody right now with social services." Marco's expression was carefully blank. "What do you want me to do about her?" Elena's blood ran cold. A 12-year-old girl, now fatherless because Victor had ordered her father killed. A child who would grow up knowing her father had been murdered, who would carry that trauma forever. "Nothing," Victor said. Marco blinked. "Boss?" "Set up a trust fund. Enough to pay for her education, housing, whatever she needs until she's 25. Anonymous donor. Make sure social services knows there are resources available." Victor's hand was clenched into a fist. "And make it clear to everyone, she's off limits. Anyone touches her, anyone even looks at her wrong, answers to me." "Understood." Marco nodded slowly. "Anything else?" "That's all. Keep me updated on the territory situation." After Marco left, Elena stared at Victor. "You're protecting his daughter." "I'm protecting a child who had nothing to do with her father's choices." Victor's voice was rough. "I killed Volkov because he threatened my family. His daughter didn't threaten anyone. She's just a kid who lost her father." "A father you killed?" "Yes. No apology, no justification. But she doesn't need to suffer for that. She didn't ask to be born into that world any more than Leo asked to be born into mine." Elena's eyes burned with tears. This was the contradiction that lived at the heart of Victor Romano, the man who could order brutal killings but also set up trust funds for enemy orphans, the man who ruled through fear but wept over his premature son. "I don't know how to reconcile who you are," she whispered. "Then don't." Victor pulled her close. "Just accept that I'm both, monster and man, killer and father. I can't be one without the other." They stood in the sterile hospital hallway, holding each other while their son fought for life 20 feet away. And Elena made her choice. Not because it was easy, not because it was right, but because loving Victor Romano meant accepting all of him. The darkness and the light, the violence and the tenderness, the danger and the safety he provided. "Okay," she said against his chest. "Okay." Victor's arms tightened around her. "Okay?" "I'm staying. After the month is up, after Leo comes home, after everything, I'm staying." Elena looked up at him. "But I have conditions." "Name them." "No more secrets. You tell me what you're doing, where you're going, what business you're handling. I don't have to like it, but I need to know." "Agreed." "And you start actually working toward legitimizing everything. Not eventually. Now. I want to see progress." Victor hesitated, then nodded. "I'll start the transition. It won't be overnight. I know, but it has to start." Elena's hand moved to his chest, over his heart. And one more thing. What? You marry me. Properly. Not some business arrangement or convenient partnership. You marry me because you love me and because Leo deserves parents who are committed to each other. Victor's expression transformed. Is that a proposal, Elena Carter? It's a condition. But she was smiling through her tears. Take it or leave it. I'll take it. Victor kissed her, deep and claiming. I'll take everything you're offering and spend the rest of my life proving I deserve it. An alarm sounded from the NICU, sharp, insistent, and they both ran. Leo's oxygen levels were dropping again, faster this time, more severe. The numbers plummeted as Elena watched in horror. 85, 79, 72, and the nurse was already calling for the doctor. What's happening? Elena grabbed the nurse's arm. Why isn't it working? His lungs are collapsing. We need to intubate. Dr. Patterson. The nurse's professional calm was cracking. The doctor burst through the doors, already issuing rapid orders. The team descended on Leo's incubator, moving with controlled urgency. Victor pulled Elena back, both of them helpless, watching their son's tiny body jerk with each intervention. Come on, Victor whispered. Come on, Leo, fight. You're a Romano. We fight. The numbers kept falling. 68, 62, 59. We're losing him, someone said. No. Elena's voice was steel. No, we're not losing him. Do whatever you have to do, whatever it takes. Dr. Patterson was working frantically, inserting new tubes, adjusting medications. The team moved like a well-oiled machine, but Elena could see the worry in their eyes. 55, 52. Victor's hand found hers, gripping so tight it hurt. He's not going to die. I won't let him die. You can't control this, Elena said, but she was squeezing his hand just as hard. You can't. Watch me. And Victor started talking, his voice low and intense, directed at the incubator. Leo, Leonardo Carter Romano, this is your father. You don't give up, you hear me? Romanos don't give up. We fight. We survive. Whatever it takes. 50. 48. Come on, baby, Elena joined in, her voice breaking. Please, please fight. We're here, we're both here, and we need you, please. The monitors screamed. The team worked frantically, and for one endless, horrifying moment, Elena thought they'd lost him. Then the numbers ticked up, just barely. 49. I've got it, Dr. Patterson said. There. Come on. 52, 55, 60. The tension in the room shifted fractionally. The numbers continued climbing. 65, 70, 75. He's stabilizing, a nurse said, and the relief in her voice was palpable. 80, 85, 90. Elena's legs gave out. Victor caught her, lowering them both to the floor, and they sat there while their son's numbers finally, blessedly, returned to normal. That was too close, Dr. Patterson said quietly. Another 30 seconds and we would have... He stopped himself. But we didn't. He's stable now. Why does this keep happening? Victor demanded. What's wrong with his lungs? They're underdeveloped. He was born 8 weeks early. His body simply isn't ready yet. Doctor. Patterson crouched beside them. I know this is terrifying, but each day he survives, his chances improve. His lungs get stronger. He gets stronger. How long? Elena's voice was hoarse from screaming. How long until he's out of danger? There's no specific timeline, but if he can make it to 36 weeks gestational age, about 4 more weeks, his chances improve dramatically. 4 more weeks of this. 4 more weeks of watching their son fight for every breath. 4 more weeks of terror and helplessness. We can do 4 weeks, Victor said, and Elena realized he was trying to convince himself as much as her. We can survive anything for 4 weeks. Elena looked at their son, so small, so fragile, so impossibly brave, and knew Victor was right. They could survive this. They had to, because Leo was worth it. Worth the fear, the pain, the constant edge of disaster. He was worth everything. The 4 weeks that followed were both the longest and shortest of Elena's life. Each day stretched into eternity as she and Victor maintained their vigil beside Leo's incubator, watching every breath, celebrating every ounce gained, weathering every crisis. But looking back, Those weeks also seemed to pass in a blur of exhaustion and adrenaline, punctuated by small victories that felt monumental. On day 15, Leo opened his eyes for the first time and seemed to focus on Elena's face through the incubator wall. She sobbed so hard that Victor had to hold her upright. On day 21, his oxygen levels remained stable for 48 consecutive hours, and Dr. Patterson cautiously upgraded his prognosis from critical to serious. On day 26, they were allowed to hold him for the first time, skin-to-skin contact that the nurses called kangaroo care. Elena cradled all 4 pounds and 7 ounces of her son against her chest, while Victor sat beside them, one hand on Leo's back, and none of them spoke because there were no words for that kind of perfection. By day 33, Leo was breathing on his own for hours at a time, and the medical team started discussing discharge plans. Not immediately, he still needed to reach 5 pounds, still needed to regulate his own body temperature, still needed to feed consistently from a bottle. But the word home entered the conversation, and Elena let herself believe it might actually happen. It was during week 5 that Marco appeared again, this time with an envelope he handed to Victor during one of their rare trips to the hospital cafeteria. "The final reports," Marco said quietly. "Volkov's organization is completely dissolved. The Russians who didn't run have sworn loyalty to you. Territory is secure." Victor opened the envelope, scanned the contents, then handed them to Elena. She read through the dry, clinical language that described the destruction of an entire criminal enterprise. Property seized, accounts frozen, key players eliminated or imprisoned. Alexei Volkov's legacy erased as if he'd never existed. At the bottom of the final page was a separate note, an update on Volkov's daughter, placed with a foster family upstate, enrolled in a good school, trust fund established and growing. Anonymous benefactor ensuring she wanted for nothing. "She asked questions," Marco said, "about who's paying for everything. Social workers don't know what to tell her." "Tell them the truth," Victor said, "that her father had an enemy who believed children shouldn't pay for their parents' mistakes. Nothing more." Elena folded the papers carefully. "You're a complicated man, Victor Romano. I'm a man who understands what it's like to be a child caught in adult wars." Victor's hand found hers under the table. "She deserves better than that. So does Leo." Speaking of which, Marco pulled out another envelope, this one thick with legal documents. The lawyer finished the paperwork. "The businesses you wanted legitimized are being restructured. The casino is selling to a consortium from Vegas, all legal, all clean. The import business is transitioning to fully licensed operations. The protection rackets are being phased out over the next 6 months." Elena's eyes widened. "You're actually doing it. You're really walking away." "Not walking away," Victor corrected. "Transitioning. I'll still have power, still have resources, but in 5 years, maybe less, everything I control will be legal, legitimate, something Leo can inherit without shame." "Boss, you know this means taking a significant financial hit," Marco warned. "The legal operations won't generate anywhere near what we're making now." "I know." Victor's expression was resolute. "But money isn't worth anything if my son grows up ashamed of his father, if Elena spends her life afraid of what I might do next." He looked at her. "I made a promise. I'm keeping it." Elena felt tears prick her eyes. Again. Everything made her cry these days, exhaustion and stress and overwhelming love all tangled together. "Thank you. Don't thank me yet. It's going to take time, and there will be complications." Victor's thumb traced circles on her hand. "But I'm committed. For both of you." Marco cleared his throat. "There's one more thing. The wedding planner called. She needs decisions on flowers and catering." Elena blinked. "Wedding planner?" "You said you wanted to get married," Victor said mildly. "I hired the best planner in the city. She's been coordinating everything while we've been here." "Victor, I can't think about weddings right now. Our son is in the NICU, which is exactly why we need to think about it." Victor pulled out his phone, showing her a calendar. "Leo's discharge is projected for 3 weeks from now, assuming he continues progressing. The planner suggested we schedule the wedding for 2 weeks after that, giving you time to recover and Leo time to adjust to being home. That's 5 weeks away. You can't plan a wedding in 5 weeks." "You can if you throw enough money at it." Victor scrolled through his phone. St. Catherine's Chapel is reserved. The reception venue is booked. The dress designer has your measurements and is creating 3 options for you to choose from. Elena stared at him. You measured me. Dr. Reeves helped. Victor had the grace to look slightly sheepish. I wanted everything ready, so when Leo came home, we could focus on him instead of wedding logistics. Despite everything, Elena laughed. You're insane. You keep saying that. Victor leaned over and kissed her. And yet you keep agreeing to marry me. That's because I'm insane too. Elena kissed him back. Okay, tell the planner I'll look at whatever she needs me to look at, but nothing too elaborate. Just family and close friends. Victor and Marco exchanged a look. What? Elena demanded. Define close friends, Victor said carefully. I don't have close friends. You know that. Just Marlene from the diner and maybe a few people from... Elena stopped. How many people did you invite? 200, Victor admitted. Give or take. 200? I have business associates who need to be there. Political connections. People who need to see that I'm establishing a family, becoming legitimate. Victor's hand cupped her face. I know it's not what you wanted, but this wedding is also a message to my world that things are changing, that I'm changing. Elena understood the politics, even if she hated them. Victor's world operated on perception and power. A small, intimate wedding would be seen as weakness, as hiding. A large public declaration was strategic. Fine, she sighed. 200 strangers watching me marry a former crime boss. What could possibly go wrong? I'll make sure nothing goes wrong. Victor's voice carried absolute certainty. You'll be safe. Leo will be safe. I promise you that. It was a promise Elena was learning to believe. 3 weeks later, on a sunny afternoon in early autumn, Dr. Patterson approached Elena and Victor with a smile that made Elena's heart leap. I think we're ready, he said. Leo weighs 5 pounds, 3 ounces. He's been breathing on his own for 72 hours. He's taking bottles consistently. Barring any setbacks in the next 48 hours, you can take him home. Elena burst into tears for what felt like the 1,000th time. Victor's arms came around her and she felt him shaking too. Home, she whispered against his chest. We can take him home. You'll need to complete the infant CPR training, Dr. Patterson continued, and we'll set up follow-up appointments with the pediatrician. He'll need monitoring for the next few months to ensure his lungs continue developing properly. But yes, he's ready to leave the NICU. The next 2 days were a whirlwind of training sessions and paperwork and preparing the penthouse for Leo's arrival. Victor had converted one of the guest rooms into a nursery, pale blue walls, a crib that probably cost more than Elena's first car, monitors and equipment that would make sure they knew the instant anything went wrong. It's too much, Elena protested when she saw it. It's necessary. Victor was testing the baby monitor for the 3rd time. I need to know he's safe, that we'll hear him if he needs us. Elena recognized the fear beneath the control. Victor had spent 5 weeks watching their son fight for life, helpless to do anything but watch. Now that Leo was coming home, Victor was channeling that helplessness into preparation, into creating the safest possible environment. It's perfect, she said instead. He's gonna love it. On discharge day, Elena dressed Leo in the tiny outfit she'd bought specifically for this moment, a onesie that said, "Worth the wait," in blue letters. He was still so small, drowning in newborn-sized clothes, but he was breathing on his own and his eyes were bright and alert. Ready to go home, baby? Elena whispered as she settled him into the car seat. It looked absurdly large around him, but the nurses had assured her it was properly sized and safe. The drive from the hospital to the penthouse took 15 minutes, and Elena spent all 15 in the back seat with Leo, one hand on his chest, monitoring every breath. Victor drove slower than she'd ever seen him drive, treating every turn like a military operation. When they finally made it inside, Marco was waiting with a grin. Welcome home, little boss. Leo blinked up at him, unimpressed. He's going to be trouble, Marco predicted. I can already tell. He's a Romano, Victor said, taking the car seat from Elena with infinite care. Of course he's going to be trouble. That first night home was simultaneously wonderful and terrifying. Elena couldn't sleep, kept getting up to check on Leo every 20 minutes, even though the monitor showed he was breathing fine. Victor was worse, standing over the crib like a sentinel, his hand on Leo's back, feeling each rise and fall of his tiny chest. "You have to sleep," Elena said around 2 in the morning, finding Victor exactly where she'd left him an hour earlier. "I will. Soon." Victor didn't take his eyes off Leo. "I just need to make sure he's okay." Elena moved to stand beside him, and together they watched their son sleep. Leo's little fists were curled near his face, and every few minutes he'd make small sounds. Not quite crying, just existing. The most beautiful sounds Elena had ever heard. "I can't believe he's ours," she whispered. "I can't believe we almost lost him." Victor's voice was rough. "So many times. If you'd been 5 minutes later getting to the hospital, if the doctors hadn't stabilized him during that first crisis, if any one of 100 things had gone differently, but they didn't." Elena took his hand. "He's here. He's healthy. He's home. He's perfect." Victor finally tore his eyes away from the crib to look at her. "And in 2 weeks I'm going to marry his mother and make this family official." "You're really ready for this? Marriage, fatherhood, legitimacy?" Elena searched his face. "No regrets about the life you're leaving behind?" "The life I'm leaving behind nearly killed both of you." Victor pulled her close. "I'd burn it all down 1,000 times over to keep you safe. To give Leo a future that doesn't involve looking over his shoulder or wondering if his father will survive the night." "What about the people who depended on you, your organization? The ones who matter have already transitioned to legitimate work. The ones who don't matter can find another boss." Victor's hand moved to cup her face. "You and Leo are my priority now. Everything else is just details." The wedding, when it finally arrived 2 weeks later, was everything Elena had feared and nothing like she'd expected. The chapel at St. Catherine's was filled with people she didn't know, Victor's business associates, politicians, lawyers, people from his world she'd only glimpsed before. But scattered among them were faces that made her smile. Marlene from the diner, crying openly. Dr. Reeves and several of the NICU nurses who'd kept Leo alive. Marco, standing as Victor's best man with Leo asleep in his arms because the baby had refused to be separated from anyone familiar. Elena wore a dress that made her feel like a princess. Ivory silk that accommodated her post-pregnancy body, with delicate lace sleeves and a train that whispered across the marble floor. Her hair was swept up, and she wore the diamond earrings Victor had given her that morning with a note that said simply, "For my queen." When she walked down the aisle and saw Victor waiting at the altar in a perfectly tailored tuxedo, his eyes locked on hers with an intensity that made her breath catch. None of the crowd mattered. There was only him and the life they were choosing together. The ceremony was brief but meaningful. Traditional vows that Victor spoke with absolute conviction, his voice carrying through the chapel. "I, Victor Romano, take you, Elena Carter, to be my lawfully wedded wife, to have and to hold from this day forward, for better or worse, for richer or poorer, in sickness and in health, to love and to cherish, until death do us part." When it was Elena's turn, she looked directly into his eyes and saw the man who'd sat beside their son's incubator for weeks, who was restructuring his entire empire to give their son a better life, who loved with a fierce intensity that both terrified and thrilled her. "I, Elena Carter, take you, Victor Romano, to be my lawfully wedded husband, to have and to hold from this day forward, for better or worse, for richer or poorer, in sickness and in health, to love and to cherish, until death do us part." The priest smiled. "By the power vested in me by the state of New York, I now pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss your bride." Victor cupped her face with both hands and kissed her with such tenderness that Elena felt tears slip down her cheeks. The chapel erupted in applause, but she barely heard it. There was only Victor's mouth on hers, his hands gentle but possessive, and the knowledge that they'd survived everything to get to this moment. When they finally broke apart, Marco brought Leo over and Victor took their son into his arms. The photographer captured the moment, the three of them together, a family officially and completely. "He's asleep through his own parents' wedding," Marco observed. "Kid has no sense of occasion." "He's had a rough couple of months," Elena said, stroking Leo's soft hair. "He's earned the right to sleep through anything." The reception was held in the ballroom of the city's most exclusive hotel. Elena made polite conversation with dozens of people whose names she immediately forgot, accepted congratulations and well wishes, and tried not to feel overwhelmed by the sheer extravagance of it all. But then Victor pulled her onto the dance floor for their first dance as husband and wife, and the crowd faded away again. He held her close as they moved to music she didn't recognize, one hand at the small of her back, the other cradling hers against his chest. "Happy?" he murmured against her ear. "Terrified," Elena admitted. "This is so much. So many people, so much attention. It'll be over soon, and then it's just us, our family." Victor kissed her temple. "This is the last big public event for a while. I promise." "What about your business? Won't they expect—" "They'll get used to the new normal." Victor's hand tightened on hers. "I meant what I said. My priorities have changed. Let them whisper about how Victor Romano went soft. I don't care anymore." Elena pulled back to look at him. "You're really okay with that? With being seen as soft?" "I'm okay with being seen as a man who chose his family over an empire." Victor's smile was slight but genuine. "There are worse legacies." Later, when most of the guests had left and they were finally able to escape to the penthouse, Elena found Victor in the nursery. He'd changed out of his tuxedo into comfortable clothes and was sitting in the rocking chair with Leo against his chest, both of them half asleep. "Couldn't put him down?" Elena asked softly. "Didn't want to." Victor's hand was splayed across Leo's tiny back. "Wanted to hold him. Remind myself this is real." Elena moved to sit on the ottoman beside the rocking chair, her hand joining Victor's on their son's back. "It's real. All of it. The wedding, the family, the future we're building." "I never thought I'd have this." Victor's voice was barely above a whisper. "A wife who knows what I am and loves me anyway. A son who's healthy and perfect. A reason to want to be better." "You are better." Elena leaned her head against his shoulder. "You're not the same man who walked into that diner 2 months ago." "Neither are you." Victor kissed the top of her head. "You're stronger, braver. You survived things that would have broken most people." "We survived them together." Elena looked down at Leo, peaceful and content between them. "That's what families do." They sat like that for a long time, the three of them in the quiet nursery, and Elena felt something settle in her chest. Peace, maybe. Or acceptance. Or just the bone-deep knowledge that despite everything, despite the danger and the fear and the violence that had brought them together, this was exactly where she was supposed to be. In the months that followed, life took on a new rhythm. Leo grew steadily, hitting every milestone with the determination of someone who'd fought too hard for life to waste a moment of it. Victor spent his days systematically dismantling and rebuilding his empire into something cleaner, legal, sustainable. It wasn't always smooth. There were complications, resistances, people who didn't like the changes. But Victor handled each obstacle with the same ruthless efficiency he'd always possessed, just channeled in a different direction. Elena found herself settling into a role she'd never anticipated: wife to a powerful man, mother to a miracle baby, and surprisingly, a voice in Victor's business decisions. He'd started asking her opinion on the legitimate ventures, valuing her perspective as someone from outside his world. "You see things I don't," he'd explained one night while reviewing contracts at the dining room table, Leo asleep in the bassinet beside them. "You understand normal. I never have." By Leo's 6-month birthday, the transformation was nearly complete. The casino had been sold. The protection operations had been phased out entirely. What remained were import businesses, real estate holdings, and investment portfolios, all legal, all legitimate, all completely boring compared to what Victor had once controlled. "Don't you miss it?" Elena asked one evening, watching him work through spreadsheets with the same intensity he'd once applied to territory disputes. The power, the excitement. Victor looked up from the computer, then over at Leo, who was attempting to eat his own foot with great determination. "Not even a little bit." "Really?" "Really." Victor closed the laptop and moved to sit beside her on the couch. "Do you know what I did today?" "What?" "Negotiated a shipping contract, argued with an accountant about tax structures, attended a zoning board meeting." He pulled her against his side. Completely mundane, totally legal, and I didn't spend a single moment wondering if someone was planning to kill me. Sounds boring. It's wonderful. Victor's hand moved to her belly, where their second child was just beginning to show. And it means this one gets to grow up without the NICU, without the fear. Just normal, boring, safe. Elena covered his hand with hers. You're really happy. I can see it. I'm happier than I've ever been. Victor kissed her softly. I have a wife I love, a son who's healthy, another baby on the way, and a life that doesn't require looking over my shoulder. Yeah, Elena, I'm happy. Leo chose that moment to roll over for the first time, surprising himself so thoroughly that he let out an indignant squawk. Victor immediately scooped him up, praising the accomplishment like it was an Olympic achievement. Elena watched her husband, former crime boss, current legitimate businessman, full-time devoted father, dance around the living room with their son, and felt her heart swell with love so intense it hurt. This was their life now, the one they'd fought for, the one they'd nearly lost a dozen times over, the one they'd chosen together despite everything that should have kept them apart. And it was perfect. On a quiet Sunday morning in early spring, with sunlight streaming through the penthouse windows and Leo babbling happily in his playpen while Elena and Victor drank coffee and read the newspaper like any normal couple, Elena finally understood what Dr. Reeves had meant all those months ago in the hospital. Every baby is different, the doctor had said, but he responded well to intervention. That's a good sign. Leo had responded to intervention, to love and care and fierce determination. And so had Victor. So had Elena herself. They'd all been premature in their own ways, thrust into situations before they were ready, forced to fight and adapt and grow faster than nature intended. But they'd survived. More than survived. They'd thrived. What are you thinking about? Victor asked, noticing her expression. How far we've come. Elena set down her coffee cup. How different everything is from that night in the diner. Best night of my life, Victor said immediately. You got shot that night. Still the best night. I found you again. Found out about Leo. Victor's hand found hers across the table. Everything good in my life started that night. Elena squeezed his hand. Mine too, even though I was terrified. Are you still terrified? Elena considered the question honestly. Sometimes, when I think about what could have happened, what we almost lost. She looked at Leo, then back at Victor. But mostly, I'm just grateful. Me too. Victor stood, pulling her up with him and into his arms. Grateful for you, for Leo, for second chances and new beginnings. Leo squealed from his playpen, demanding attention, and they separated to attend to their son. Elena lifted him up, pressing kisses to his chubby cheeks while he giggled, and Victor wrapped his arms around both of them. This was their family. Unconventional, hard-won, built on a foundation of darkness that was slowly transforming into light. And as Elena stood there in the early morning sunshine, held by the man she loved while their son laughed between them and their second child grew beneath her heart, she knew with absolute certainty that every moment of fear, every instance of pain, every terrifying choice had been worth it. Because this love, this family, this life was worth everything. The collision that had brought them together had nearly destroyed them both. But from that destruction, they'd built something stronger than either of them had been alone. Something that would last. Something that would endure. And in the end, that was all anyone could ask for. A love strong enough to survive anything, and a family worth fighting for. They had both, and that was enough.